Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.
Hello, I'm Lorene Mills, and welcome to Report from Santa Fe. Our guest today is Paola Gianturco. Thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
I must tell you, your book, Wonder Girls, Changing Our World, makes me so happy. It really makes my heart sing.
Oh,
Thank you for writing it. Tell me a little about your background and your other books, because this is a part of a triptych. So give us an introduction into the wonderful stories in this book.
For the last almost 25 years, I've been doing books about women and girls all over the world who are changing the world. And the last three I see as part of a complementary set. The first of the three was called Women Who Light the Dark, and it was about women who lead change in 15 countries. The next book was called Grandmother Power, and it was about activist grandmothers who take one look at our troubled world and say, not good enough for my grandchildren. And now, Wonder Girls, Changing Our World, which is about 13 groups of girls in 15 countries, all over the world, as far distant as the Americas and Africa and Asia and the Middle East and Oceania. All of the girls in the book are ages 10 to 18.
Yeah. Well, you point out that it's transforming our world now. They say children are our future, the girls are our future. No. Right now they're changing our world.
Exactly.
And some of these stories are amazing, and I'd like to get to them. I think the first one we'll start with is the girls in Bali. This is such a wonderful story. Let me just show a picture to sort of set the mood. Tell me about this picture, and tell me about these sisters who started this amazing.
Two girls, Melati and Isabel, when they were 10 and 12, looked at their beautiful island of Bali where the beaches were covered with plastic trash and decided that they would mobilize the children of Bali to collect signatures on a petition to try to convince the governor to outlaw the use of plastic bags on their island. You saw them in that photograph flying their signature kite on the beach to attract attention to their cause. It has their logo, Bye Bye Plastic Bags.
That's the name of the group,
which
Bye
is
Bye
what they call their
Bags.
organization.
BYE.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Bye Bye Plastic Bags. When they got to the point that they had stood in the airport and collected signatures on the internet, they had several thousand that they wanted to present to the governor. They called and asked for appointment, and he denied them. He thought, just kids. They called the press, you will appreciate this story, and said, we are going on a hunger strike until the governor agrees to see us. And they did that. No governor wants to have the children under his domain on a hunger strike. So he saw them the very next day. And he also signed a memorandum of understanding, which they just happened to have with them, agreeing to work with them to end the use of plastic bags on the island of Bali by 2018. So they're in the final throes of this campaign. He is, in fact, working with them right now. They have, interestingly, because so many people go visit Bali on vacation, they have now Bye Bye Plastic Bags groups in New York and Guadalajara and Nepal and Australia as a result of children coming to the island and catching the passion for this cause.
Well, this caught the passion of other people. I believe Jane Goodall herself rearranged her schedule to come and support them. And this is like Isabel and Melati, these sisters. How old were they?
They were 10 and 12 when they started this project.
And then they got other groups of girls that they were in gymnastics with and things like this. And they didn't just get rid of plastic bags, they replaced them.
They have employed women in the mountains who had no work, sewing reusable bags that they are taking to retailers, and the retailers then distribute to their customers.
I just think that is phenomenal. That's it just does my heart good to see that. And what I love is that most of these girls said, not only in this story but in many of them, this will be my cause forever. I'm not just going to move on to, save the puppies or something. This is where my heart is. And what kind of leaders are we? If they're this active and this productive at ages 10 and 12, get ready, world. I just love it. So the next, we could do a whole show on each one of these, but the next one I want to go to happens to be the group that brought you here, Creativity for Peace. And again, what they do is there's a lot of intractable problems in this world, and there's some world conflicts like North and South Ireland and Israel and Palestine. And let me just show a picture. Well, you start talking about them, and then I'll show the picture of what Creativity for Peace is doing.
Creativity for Peace is a 3-year leadership program that begins with Israeli and Palestinian high school girls coming here to Santa Fe for an almost 1-month-long summer camp. And during that time, they meet, almost all of them for the first time, the enemy. They're full of fear and rage because many of them have had people in their own families killed or injured by the other. And in every activity for a month, they are paired, one Israeli and one Palestinian girl. So every morning they spend in dialogue sessions in which they learn compassionate listening and authentic storytelling. And as they hear each other's stories, they realize that the experience of fear and rage is shared, and they come to begin to understand each other. And then in the afternoon, they create art together.
And here's a picture of them creating art at Creativity for Peace. And what is so astonishing to me is, these are old family hatreds because someone's grandmother was killed by the other side or grandfather. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And some of them said, well, that they were thinking about getting up and killing the other, at the camp because they've been trained to always try to kill the enemy. And then when the floodgates open, and compassionate listening is really key because we are all, each side was faced with the same dilemma. And as young girls, that's a very fierce burden to put on a young woman. It's a 3-year program, so they go back. They do the summer camp, and they go to Meow Wolf, they go to all these things here and really experience a whole new world for them. And then they go back and continue on the work in their own communities.
By the end of the camp time, almost inevitably, they discover that an enemy is someone whose story you don't know.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And they, by then, have mastered the ability to communicate and hear each other. And they return to Israel and Palestine. I went a couple of years after I photographed them here in Santa Fe. I went to Israel and Palestine to see what their projects were and what they were doing. And in fact, each of them had begun in their own communities a project or a program that either duplicated the program here in Santa Fe, or in some cases, for example, a girl named Shoshana started a running group with Palestinian and Israeli girls and boys. They're now running marathons, not only in Israel and Palestine, but also in Europe, and winning.
And the wisdom, the depth of experience that has come out with them. One girl was talking to, maybe she was Palestinian, was talking to a very militant young Israeli soldier, but she listened to him tell his story with that compassionate listening, and then she told him her story. Because she had listened to him, he had to listen to her. And she said, that seed will be planted. Change will come about just from exchanging our stories.
That's right. These girls, several of them told me, the politicians, even let's pretend they ever get around to making a political resolution and peace. There really can't be peace in Israel and Palestine unless the people respect and accept each other.
Well, again, we could do a show on each one of these, but we're going to try to get some of my favorites in. Let's move to India now, and to a group called Shaheen. And you said that you were really inspired by Jamila Nishrat. Is that her name?
Jamila Nishat started an organization called the Shaheen Women's Resource Center. Jamila is a very famous feminist poet in India. And she grew up in Old City, Hyderabad, and knew that the mix of Dalit, used to be called untouchable caste, and Muslim, and other backward castes, actually a official government category. So those three groups of very low-income, impoverished people who are nonetheless quite traditional in their behaviors kept their daughters inside the houses. They couldn't go out. And Jamila had the idea that she would invite them to meet at her center, and she had to arrange with the police to escort them to meetings and negotiate not just with their families but with their neighbors, because the whole neighborhoods were sort of trained to send the girl home if she ever came out of her house. So at some point she was able to collect a large group of these girls, and they began drawing together. And one girl drew a bird, and the bird she drew had no wings. So Jamila looked and said, "Isn't it missing something?" And the girl nodded and rushed back to her seat to continue drawing, and then she drew a cage. These girls have no freedom. But little by little, Jamila began encouraging them to do daring things. So we were talking earlier about the fact that they now draw safety maps. Yeah. They draw their neighborhoods. They put X's where they have been harassed or molested. They sign the maps on the back and give them to the police so they can redouble their monitoring in those areas. Another thing they're doing that intrigued me is they're teaching each other to do skills that will earn money so they don't have to be reliant on their future husbands or their fathers or their brothers.
Is one of them the application of henna for
yes,
weddings?
Exactly.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And
too.
It is beautiful. Yeah. And when I was interviewing, I was sitting watching one of the 15-year-old girls named Nita teaching henna. And I said, "Nita, do you consider yourself an activist?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Tell me something you've done that you're proud of." And she said, "I just led a sting operation against a sex trafficking ring from Dubai." She's 15. And I will let people read her story in her own words. All the girls in the book tell their own stories in their own words. But I'll tell you, the bottom line is that every single member of that sex trafficking ring is now in jail.
But it was so dangerous, the courage of this young woman. And she said she even had a camera under her clothes, but she was so scared that it went out of focus and shot the ceiling the whole time.
But she got the sound.
She got the audio. She got the sound. She went with groups, with two women from Shaheen, pretending to be her mother and her aunt, to arrange this marriage. Well, it is a whole cultural thing, but it's just not, you just can't be selling girls. And a lot of the parents, they need money. They want the dowry. That's right. And so they literally sell their daughters. Yeah. But they're also, we're speaking today with Paola Gianturco. Thank you so much. They also were forbidden to sing. And
yes, only boys and men are allowed to sing in their culture.
And to dance. So here they are.
Here they are,
glorious.
Singing. They're singing music that was inspired by Sufi devotional music, but with lyrics by Jamila Nishat about girls' freedom. And despite the fact that men and boys are the only ones who are allowed to sing in their cultures, they're about to record a CD.
Wonderful. And she's the one who said the revolution will be led by a 12-year-old girl, and
exactly.
I think she's right. Psychologists, and this comes up a lot in people who work with girls, often talk about the sense when a preteen or early teen girl gets a real sense of injustice for the first time. They are outraged, and the flame to bring justice and to correct injustice is so passionate and so strong. It is almost an unstoppable force.
That's exactly right. If you can channel that outrage, they can cause incredible change. I saw that we should talk about the fact that I had a co-author on this book.
Yes, let's talk about Alex.
Exactly. Alex Sangster, my granddaughter, then age 11, the year that we were working on this project, was exactly like that as she began learning about these injustices, as she did 70 interviews, mostly via Skype and FaceTime, because she had to go to school.
Yeah.
She was as outraged as the girls themselves. She is now passionate about helping these girls and wrote a section of each chapter in which she used the material that she gathered from her interviews. She asked people what kind of help they needed and wanted from the women who read the book and the girls in their lives.
And you said that she added the sections about how you, the reader, the viewer, can change the world. She showed you ways to do this, and I want to say that all the money for this book goes to the Global Fund for Women.
That's true.
So, and it's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful book.
That's true, but there is also, until February 4, a show, an exhibit of my photographs here in Santa Fe at CCA, and all of those photographs are for sale, and the proceeds go to Creativity for Peace.
Oh, good. So another group, this is Malawi. Let's go to Africa now. This is so astonishing to me. Again, the power of the Polynesian girls to actually change the law about something, a disposable product, paper, plastic bags. But what the girls in Malawi did is just phenomenal. Please tell us a medium version of that story. It's one of my favorites.
Half of the girls in Malawi are married before they're 18. Half. Most before they're 15. Some are as young as 10 or 11. Malawi is a very poor country. You were making the point earlier that the family's financial position often affects what they do with their girls. And in fact, in this case, daughters are often married off because that's one less mouth to feed. And maybe they get a bride price, could be one goat, in exchange for the daughter. So it's deeply entrenched behavior in the country of Malawi. And of course, child marriage ends a girl's education and her prospects for future independence. So the girls began inspired by the fact that a 12-year-old girl named Memory Banda discovered that her younger sister, aged then newly 11, was pregnant. Oh. She was so horrified that she, Memory, began mobilizing the girls in her village, Chitera, Malawi, and they mobilized other girls literally all over the country to work together to force Parliament to change the law and make child marriage illegal. They had allies. They worked with mothers. They worked with women members of Parliament. They worked with women village chiefs, some of whom, I interviewed one who was 73 years old. She was completely illiterate herself. Her 5 children had all graduated from university. She was passionate about the value of education and worked with these girls through other women village chiefs throughout Malawi. When I was there, she had just annulled 220 child marriages and sent them back to school, fined the family 1 goat for having sold their daughter, and then used the money from the goat, which she then sold, to pay the school fees for the child bride who was about to go back to school. There was a real collaboration among these groups.
Yes, Women United. One of the other factors, besides the fact that getting married that young ends their education, but they're not physically prepared for childbearing.
Exactly.
And so they end up with fistulas and all sorts of really terrible problems.
It's just catastrophic. That's exactly right.
And so I'm so happy for this grandmother. Well, let's show a picture of the happy day.
Yes, exactly. After 5 years, the Parliament did indeed pass a law that changed the age of marriage to 18. Some of the women chiefs have, in fact, because they have legal jurisdiction over their own villages and regions, some of them, including the woman I told you about, changed the law in their areas so that you have to be 21 in order to be married, which gives you enough time to finish school. So the girls were celebrating.
Yes,
oh my goodness,
were.
What a celebration
that was. And not only
was.
to have your education, but also to learn a way to support yourself so that you can be independent and choose your life.
Exactly.
Yes. One other story that the child bride kidnapping. Tell me about that. Where was that?
Oh, that happens. I was very surprised to discover that happens in Kyrgyzstan. It's the only country. I've worked now in 62 countries and documented the lives of women and girls literally around the world. I've never been anywhere where this tradition existed except Kyrgyzstan. Girls and boys are considered so unequal that boys literally kidnap girls off the sidewalk to be their brides. She looks cute, put her in a car, take her home to their family, and the family is waiting, and if they can, put a lacy white handkerchief on the girl's head, and this is an effort of the mothers and the brothers and the whole family, she's considered married. And then it is her obligation from there on not to go to school, but to essentially serve that family, clean the house, do the cooking, have the babies, raise the children, and so forth.
Oh, you described one of the girl coming home from school with her backpack of school things, being kidnapped from the street, her pack left on the sidewalk,
exactly.
And off she goes. And
this is illegal in Kyrgyzstan, but it is such a deeply entrenched tradition that in the rural areas, 80% of the marriages begin that way. 80.
And you talk about a family who had 4 daughters kidnapped for marriage, and their son was going to get married, and they were going to procure his bride by kidnapping,
exactly.
Even though they knew the pain that it had caused them.
Yeah.
So how was this situation ameliorated?
Well, it's going to take a long time. The girls whom I've visited there, the girl activists of Kyrgyzstan, are using the culture to almost as if it were a martial art, using the culture itself to enlighten people. So, for example, they are there is an amazing myth, an origin myth about Kyrgyzstan. It's a very long poem. It's longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey put together. 770,000 lines.
Yeah.
Only men and boys are allowed to read it and to recite it. And the girls have begun to learn it and read it and recite it, and they're entering competitions and winning them. In other words, by demonstrating at the core of the culture that they are, in fact, equal, they are just beginning to change the attitude that assumes that boys are better than girls. Wrong.
I must say there are more stories in the book. We only had time to do these, but as you travel around, and there are many stories in America too. There's a Get Lit program about literature. 30,000 teens a year are taught to do slam poetry and to do all this in Chicago, or New York? Is it the journalists, the girl videographers?
In Chicago, Global Girl Media. The girls are taught to report and blog and also to become videographers, and they post everything online, exploring issues that affect girls. They're usually not covered by mainstream media.
Oh, yeah, and here in Santa Fe, Creativity for Peace. So, for our audience out there, the PBS audience is a very active audience. What is your call to action? What would you have them do? I think once anyone who reads your book, and let me hold it up now, it's called Wonder Girls, Changing Our World, right now, not in the future, but right now. What can we do?
Oh, I hope there are many things you can do. Read Alex's section, which tells you exactly what each of these groups would like to have by way of help from the readers of the book. There are also ideas on the project website, which is wondergirlsbook.com. Support the organizations that are funding these girls, including Creativity for Peace, for example, Global Fund for Women, and because 100% of our author royalties from Wonder Girls go to the Global Fund for Women, which is distributing them to groups of grassroots groups of girls around the world. They will already be helping if they just buy a book.
And for our own girls. You know, we all know girls of this age, we really need to listen to them, don't we?
Oh, yes.
And empower them.
Exactly. And they will enjoy these stories. Some of the requests, for example, the girls in Bali told Alex that they would love it if girls other places started Bye-Bye Plastic Bags groups, or if they just told the stories over social media and shared the news that girls ages 10 to 18 really can cause change.
Yeah. Change laws and nations. It's just... So, are you going to, take a little rest after this triptych, or are you on to another project? What's next for you?
I don't know yet, but I will say that Alex's younger sister, who is just newly 10, has put me on notice. She said, "Grandmother, I just want you to know that I was born to write."
And does she have a passion? Does she have a cause?
Well,
she's just watching right now?
She's been watching. Actually, she and her sister are, as we speak, thinking about how to develop Wonder Girls and continue it, because it has captured people's fancy in such an inspiring way.
Well, the comic book character Wonder Woman, even as a female character, has finally come into her own, that wonderful movie. And it's so wonderful of you to shine the spotlight on Wonder Girls, because they dwell among us, and they are the future.
And the present.
And the present. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you have a last word for our audience?
Oh, I wish you good things.
Yes, I wish them good things too. And I wish you good things. Again, our guest today is Paola Gianturco, and this wonderful book, Wonder Girls. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I'm Lorene Mills. I'd like to thank you, our audience, for being with us today on Report from Santa Fe. We'll see you next time.
Past archival programs of Report from Santa Fe are available at the website reportfromsantafe.com. If you have questions or comments, please email info@reportfromsantafe.com. Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.